Welcome to Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you very much for joining us again this week. On today's program, we are discussing what a Partnership for National Unity is calling flagship projects. And apart from calling them flagship projects, they're also calling it flawed projects. Now, these are projects, of course, that we would have heard a whole lot about. We would have even seen government fighting strong and blaming opposition for trying to stymie development, for not allowing these projects to pass in terms of being approved in the National Assembly without being properly scrutinized. So there are projects that really and truly made the news in a big way. Of course, those projects, Amila Falls Hydro Project, the Atlantic Hotels Inc., some of you may know that as the Marriott Hotel project, the Chadijagan International Airport project, that was a project proposing to extend the airport and do additional works. Then there was the fiber optic cable project, the one laptop per family project, and of course recently the specialty surgical hospital project, and we all know how that turned out. So we'll be talking about that and trying to find out if a Partnership for National Unity feels anyway vindicated now that project has somehow failed according to reports in the media. On the panel with me to discuss this major issue, or I should say these major issues, I begin by introducing to you Ms. Annette Ferguson, APNU Member of Parliament. Of course, she assists APNU MP Joseph Harmon in the public works and infrastructure sector. Welcome, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you very much, Malika, and good afternoon to you viewers there in TV land.
And also welcome to APNU Member of Parliament and Shadow Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Mr. Joseph Harmon, who is also an attorney at law. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Malika. And thank you very much, all of Guyana, for welcoming us into your homes on another Friday. I'm very happy to be on this program with the leader of the opposition. I know that we will say quite a number of things today to make the Guyanese people very concerned about what we're discussing.
Exactly. It's good to have you back after a long time. And of course, no stranger to Guyana, the leader of the People's National Congress Forum and leader of the opposition, Brigadier the Honorable David Granger. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks very much, Malika. It's good to be back.
All right, great. Before we get into today's discussion, I'll allow you to take a look and, of course, a listen at a brief clip just outlining and being a little more specific about exactly what it is that we're talking about, so that you'll get the sense and you'll understand why it is that APNU is calling all 6 projects flawed projects. Take a look and we'll come right back with you. Instead of a government that addresses the needs of the people, one that creates projects to eliminate and minimize problems, Guyanese have been saddled with at least 6 projects that have brought continuous burdens, created more problems than solutions, and raised more questions than answers. Citizens were promised cheap and reliable electricity through the Amila Falls Hydro Project. Instead, they were given broken promises, more blackouts, and hiked rates. Citizens were promised jobs through the construction of the Marriott Hotel, but instead, those jobs were given to international laborers. Government proclaimed and pronounced that the expansion and extension of the runway and terminal building of the CBJ airport would benefit all of Guyana. Instead, the residents at Temeri North had their lives upturned and uprooted as they were threatened with bulldozers and bullyism from both the Ministries of Housing and the Ministry of Public Works. The famous one laptop per family program's purpose as to who would really benefit was questioned. It was even eventually described and turned out to be nothing but an election gimmick. Then there was the fiber optic cable project. Reports have revealed that troubles plagued that project from the start. However, the government never admitted that it was in too deep and had no idea where to go next. And the tale of the specialty hospital continues to make the rounds as government blames Surindra and Surindra blames government. In 2013, PNCR leader and opposition leader Brigadier David Granger declared that something had to be done in our nation to address all what he calls major flawed projects. The opposition leader had then traced and linked the flawed projects back to the time of the then Guyanese President Brigadier and promised to review these through the work of a Partnership for National Unity in and out of the National Assembly.
If you're going to build
a hydropower scheme, wherever it is, the interest of the people must be put first.
And look at the Amila Fall hydropower project. All of these projects, comrades, the PPP has us in a hole. You all don't realize how much trouble you're in? A man sit down in Richmond Hill, and he draw a line from here to there, and call it the Amila Falls Road, costing how much? $15 million. Well, any of you ever go in the bush, but no, you don't draw a line from point to point. You have to walk the ground and see where the creeks there. You have to walk the ground and see where the bush there, where the hills there, where the swamp there. But you can't see where the swamp there when you're there in Richmond Hill. So what has happened? Where is the road? The road isn't done yet. And the road will never done. But Fipmouth, he'll get the contract. It's 7 years, Jack Dio in discussions with these people. All I'm telling you is the PPP has to be stopped before they mortgage the entire country.
People were very concerned that the expansion of the Chedijagan International Airport was going to have a direct impact on their lives. That people were told these houses which they have been living in for over 20 years, in some cases 30 years, was going to be bulldozed by a madman by the name of Rosenberg. They were told that if they do not remove from here, they will be removed. Well, clearly that was not a position which APNU could accept, because in our manifesto and in all of our major presentations which we have made in the National Assembly and at public meetings, we have always said that the interests of the Guyanese people must be put first. And that is something we want to underline here today, that the interests of the people must be put first.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what is the project, the interest of the people must be paramount. So that if you're going to build and expand or extend the airport, which we think is a good thing, the interest of the people must be put first.
Chedijagan Airport, International Airport, okay. The airport was built by the Americans 65 years ago. It's built on a little hill. Coming in is a swamp. And then is a hill, and then it goes down again. A contract was entered into with China Harbor Engineering Company. And the contract was signed, and money is being spent. And we challenged the contract, comrades. Your MPs challenged the contract. Why? Because they have to create an artificial hill to extend where the natural hill is. But the soil cannot take the weight of an artificial hill. And they only find out after the contract signed. So the contract already started to overrun. So they know what to get Canadian technicians to measure the soil to see if the soil can take the weight. So they have to find 650,000 truckloads. Specialty hospital will have special prices, special rates for special people. We have insisted on a primary healthcare system so that ordinary people with ordinary diseases, throughout human history, women get baby, but now they're going into hospital to die. And then you ask other thing, but who gives you this injection? What is that? This country is failing its young mothers. It's failing its children. It's failing the hinterland residents because of primary health care problems. We have a primary health care system that is broken. Instead of looking after the people where they are, providing proper ambulance services, we have a system which is fractured. One laptop per family, sounds good. Comrade, but after 2-3 months, you have to join a queue in Queenstown to go to get it repaired. And what I want you all to do, all you all rushing out to get this one laptop family, go by a church and ask them for a place in the burial ground to put the laptops. Because they are not going to last you a long time. They're not good quality, and they will not last. And it's a scam. The project was put in the hands of certain individuals who are close to President Jagdeo. And the money will be spent, and your children will not be the beneficiaries of that project. I said, why not one laptop per teacher? Let the teachers get the laptop so they can go out and teach the children. And then we look at the Atlantic Hotels Incorporated, otherwise known as the Marriott Hotel. Who are these investors? Nobody knows. The press asking Mr. Superman Brassington, who is the secret investor? Nobody knows. If it is an open project using public funds, why can't we be told? But comrades, tell me something. If your husband go in the gold field and come back now, children need shoes, children need food, children need clothes. He gone and built some big house. Where's the food? Where the clothes? Where the school books? And that is what is happening in our country. They're building a big hotel and the people suffering. You all can't go in the hotel. What you all want is a good bridge. What you all want is a little pavement so people don't have to walk on the road. What you all want is a paved road. Good schools so your children don't have to drop out. What you want is good jobs for your children when they leave school. Who is going to stay at the 5-star hotel? Not 5-star people.
If you are going to build an international hotel or whatever type of hotel you're going to build, wherever you put it, the interest of the people must be put first.
As the opposition continued to criticize these projects in the last 2 years, they themselves have come in for some heavy criticisms and blame from government. The PPPC government had even resorted to protesting the opposition over cuts and reductions they made in the National Assembly on some of these named projects and others. Government accused the opposition of stymieing the country's growth and development. However, the opposition insists that such projects must benefit all Guyanese and not just a few business persons or wealthy section of the population. But the question really is whether or not the government has and continues to ignore the pleas and requests of the opposition. In July 2014, Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh was in a newspaper article quoted as saying that nothing can stop the continuation of controversial projects as government will persevere. In what many have considered disrespect to the work of the National Assembly and downright arrogance, the Finance Minister reportedly said that his government will complete controversial projects despite actions taken in the House, meaning the National Assembly. According to further reports, Dr. Singh and the PPPC regime believes in those quote-unquote flawed projects as the values are considerable to Guyanese. But Granger is adamant that the projects are flawed by the absence of best practices and good governance. He believes that the deals are flawed and his partnership will continue to examine the agreements so that the projects could be thoroughly ventilated in the National Assembly. There you have it, a clip explaining exactly what it is that we're talking about today, and I'll immediately hand you over to leader of the People's National Congress Reform and opposition leader, Brigadier Granger.
Thank you very much, Malika. What we are seeing in Guyana is a 15-year-old serialized pattern of blunders. For the last 15 years, the presidencies of Jagdeo and Donald Ramatar together have inflicted on Guyana a number of mega projects which seem to be very attractive at first, but the devil is always in the details. And we are afraid that the people of Guyana will have to be bearing the burden of these failed, flawed projects for years to come. My colleagues, Mr. Joe Harmon and Ms. Annette Ferguson, will discuss in detail some of these projects which have already been mentioned. The fiber optic cable, the one laptop per family, the specialty hospital, the Atlantic Hotel or Marriott Hotel, the Amila Falls, and Chedijagan International Airport. All of them are flawed, and there are other projects, road building and other projects which we can speak about, but today we're focusing on those 6. But APNU is proposing a 5-part solution, a 5-point solution to deal with these problems. We're not the government, and we cannot make these projects suddenly work. Some of them have failed, and some of them could never recover. But what we are asking is to prevent further catastrophe. President Donald Ramatara does 5 things. First of all, let us all get together. The government, the opposition, civil society, let us come together and have serious discussions about these projects. These projects will cost about 250 billion Guyana dollars. This is serious money. When you look at all of the costs that have been incurred over this 15-year period by Bar Jagdeo and Donald Ramatara, your children and grandchildren will be paying back these loans for years to come, for decades to come. So we're asking President Ramatara to get all of the stakeholders together and let us examine all of these projects. We want him to, secondly, remove the misfits, people who are not competent. All of these projects are specialized. You cannot put somebody who doesn't have a clue about hydroelectricity in charge of hydroelectricity. The same person running hydroelectricity cannot run a hotel, cannot run a hospital. These projects are different. And you need to have specialized people with managerial and management structures. And right now we have misfits who are trying to be supermen running all of these projects. Third, we need to correct the errors which have already occurred. And our spokespersons in the National Assembly, Mr. Harmon himself, Mr. Carl Greenidge, and Ms. Annette Ferguson, Mr. Basil Williams, all of our MPs have been calling for a re-examination of these projects. And even the other projects like the Skeldon Sugar Factory, which our MP responsible for agriculture, Dr. Rupert Ruppanainen, we've been calling for a re-examination so that we can prevent the greater tragedy from occurring. Right now, they're all flawed. Another important measure that he must take immediately is to harness NISL. NISL is one of the biggest problems we have in the financial sector in this country because it is not under the control of the National Assembly. It is under the control of Mr. Winston Brassington and a small group of people, possibly including former presidents. I don't know. But NISL's finances have to be brought under the control of the National Assembly. Public money must come under public control. And right now, NISL is out of control. So we ask for these 4 measures, these 5 measures to be implemented. So let us start saving Guyana from a financial catastrophe. Let us start saving our children from having to pay back these great loans that are being taken. And let us try to run Guyana in a lawful and orderly way. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier. One of the solutions, one of your 5 points, you talked about collaborating to discuss so that we can better these projects. When you say that, do you mean the same projects or starting over from scratch, getting new projects that would benefit the people?
In every case, there is some good, but that good has been smothered by bad. We, in a partnership for national unity, want hydroelectricity, you know. But the project itself, for delivering that hydroelectricity, is flawed. So let us sit down together to decide how best we can provide Guyanese with hydroelectric power, cheap hydroelectric power. So what we're talking about is looking back at those projects to see if there's anything worth saving in them. If there's nothing worth saving, well, we don't save it. But if there's something worth saving, let us install, let us establish, let us introduce the mechanisms. For example, we have proposed, we had many briefings on the Amila Falls project. We have proposed creating a Potaro Basin Development Authority so that the project can benefit from several rivers and that the entire basin could be developed. So we are not against hydropower. We want to ensure that it works. This is serious money. You're talking about 840 million US dollars, and by the time we finish, it may come up to be $1 billion US dollars. But we want to make sure that at the end of it, we don't end up with the road to nowhere. We don't end up with projects which are so badly flawed that the money is wasted and the people of Guyana have nothing to see for it. We want that. We want hydropower. So when you look at all of the other projects, like the airport, sooner or later, the airport will have to be expanded. But we are looking at priority. We may decide, well, look, the more important thing is the Demerara Harbor Bridge, because thousands of people commute over that bridge. I mean, it's almost like if Georgetown was divided in two. And if that bridge doesn't function, a lot of workers will not be able to get to work. A lot of enterprises in Georgetown, including government offices, will dry up. So we want to have a completely reliable bridge. So it may be more important for APNU to have a good Demerara Harbor Bridge rather than a five-star hotel. This is the type of debate that we want, and that has not occurred. We are the majority, we are part of the majority, and we insist on being heard. So that is what I'm trying to suggest in having this multi-stakeholder dialogue, to review all of the projects and reprioritize, reorder the priorities.
Okay, sir, thank you. MP Harmon, one of the things Brigadier talked about in terms of having a 5-point, I'm going to call it 5-point plan solution, is removing the misfits. Now, we're talking about 6 failed projects. You haven't learned your lesson after the first, the second, nor the third one. Then, I mean, something is definitely wrong. So what I'm really asking you is, how is it put out there in terms of bidding for the contract? How does that work? Is it that government is having a problem, or they just don't know how to do that?
Thank you, Malika. I fully support the recommendation here, the call by the leader of the opposition to engage a multi-stakeholder approach. In fact, I think it was last week, we met with the Private Sector Commission, and this is one of the issues they raised, the question of involvement or the inclusion of all of the stakeholders in looking at these projects, in reordering, reprioritizing. In fact, they themselves have some recommendations on the way forward in this regard. So if what the leader is saying, basically we've actually started consultations in that regard. We met with the Private Sector Commission. They have a subcommittee of the Private Sector Commission that deals with the infrastructure, public infrastructure. And there's some recommendations that came from that went to what is called the National Strategic Competitive Committee. But insofar as the personnel on these projects are concerned, we do believe that the contract negotiations have not been as open and transparent as they ought to be. And so we've always asked for the contracts which affect the Mila Falls. We'd asked for the contract which affects the specialty hospital. We've asked for the contract that affects the Marriott Hotel. We've asked for the contract that affects all of these projects that the leader of the opposition spoke about. The Cherry Jagan International Airport and the one laptop per family. And if you examine these contracts, you will find singularly an absence of proper contract negotiations. You will find as if there has been no proper due diligence in the work that had been done even before these contracts were awarded and before the work actually started. And it is coming out now in the wash with the syringe engineering matter, where the Attorney General is now saying that there was no due diligence. He is now saying that. After this thing went to Parliament, they got money, and all sorts of things have happened. He is now saying that there is no proper due diligence. And that is his job. That is his job. But that has happened, that has plagued a number of these projects. The Myla Falls, as the leader spoke about, this contract itself is also flawed, badly negotiated. The Atlantic Hotel, the Marriott, well, that's the worst, because it made no provision whatsoever for Guyanese labor in the first instance. And after a set of noise was made, then they started tinkering here and there to say, oh, well, we have people who are delivering sand and so on to the project and they're benefiting from it. But that is another issue there. Now, of course, the bulk of the money has been spent by Guyana, by Guyanese taxpayers' dollars, and Mr. Brassington is still roaming the world looking for some investor. We were told that there was an investor who was supposed to come in with 8 million United States dollars on a project that 8 million is not even half of what is spent. But that investor, for the investment of $8 million, was getting the majority of the shares. Well, clearly there's something wrong about that. Something absolutely wrong about that. But what has happened, Malika, is that we have a government that just does not care. We have a government that just does not care. They will award a contract to the highest bidder, and they don't care about it. And they will say to you that we are not bound to accept the lowest bid.
But so, does the Constitution cover any part of what you're saying here now in terms of the lowest bid?
Now, this here has to do with what our laws say, right? Because what happens is if you have a contract, it goes to the National Procurement and Tender Board, right? And this is where all of these things are done for national contracts. And therefore, the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board, they will review these things and then make a recommendation. The government will say, okay, we object or we allow it to go through. So they have an objection or no objection facility, their cabinet. But they utilize that no objection facility to impose their own will on what has happened at the tender board. So, for example, a lot of these contracts, if you look at them again, you wonder who negotiated this. Once I asked the Attorney General, how could you be proud of these contracts that have been negotiated? And what he was saying to me is that the Attorney General's office is not involved in a lot of these projects at the stage of contract.
So you were eventually given a chance to review every single contract. I mean, in the 6 projects that we're talking about today, were you eventually given a chance to review those contracts?
No, we saw some of them and we saw a part of the contract. They introduced in the National Assembly some of these contracts, but they were I would say that they were fixed in a way. So some information was extracted and you got a sort of a cleaned up document, okay, right? It's not the real thing, but you get something. You understand me? But what I'm saying is that even that clean up thing which they gave to you is so flawed. It is so flawed that you really wonder, with all the attorneys we have in this country, people who have acquitted themselves at the international level, international court of justice and all these things, and you can still have a contract like this signed on behalf of the people of this country. This is why I'm saying that we have a government that is a runaway train. They have no regard for due process, and of course this spin doctor, Dr. Luncheon, would always find a way out of it. He said, well, this is what he call selective tendering, or something like that, that says basically we have seen what is required, but we're not going to go with that. So, for example, now you have the one laptop per family. They said they awarded the contract not to the lowest bidder because they said we are not bound to accept the lowest bid. You have the question of the syringe engineer, that is the specialty hospital. They said we are not bound to accept the lowest bid, so they went to Syringer instead of Feathers Lloyd. And then, of course, this 4-lane highway on the East Coast, right? The tender board made one recommendation, and certain government officials who shall not be named right now said, no, this thing can't work. Give this company it, and the company got it. So what we have here is a lawless government, that they have no regard for due process, and they will do whatever they feel like doing once it is in the interest of a few and their friends.
Before I come to MP Ferguson, is there anything legally that a Partnership for National Unity can probably do to make government accountable in terms of giving APNU a chance, APNU's team, to review these projects before anything at all is done? Can you do anything to force them
I
to
think
do
the
that?
leader has put it out there quite correctly, that we have to engage. We have to engage. And our experience in actually taking these matters to court, and you have you tied up in court for years and years, and by the time you actually get a decision, the project is either completed or it's abandoned.
Okay.
So while I am an attorney, I practice in these courts, I recognize the reality is that matters of this nature take a long time to be concluded, and then after it's concluded, at first instance, they can appeal to the Court of Appeal, and they can appeal to the Caribbean Court of Justice and tie you up in litigation, and then the government spends a lot of money doing things like that, particularly under this Attorney General that we have.
Okay, all right. MP Ferguson, and as somebody who's done so much work in the fields, and you continue to do so much work in the fields, do you get a sense that the Guyanese population, when these mega projects are brought to the fore, do you get a sense that they understand how it would benefit them, or how it would actually take away from their lives? And if I can be specific, for example, the one laptop per family project, you may find mothers, especially single mothers, saying, okay, this may be a good thing for me, I don't have to spend money for a laptop for my child. But do you get the sense that they understand everything that goes with that?
Thank you very much, Malika. To answer your question, indeed, the general populace out there is not fully aware as to what are some of the benefits that they can receive from these mega projects that the government, would offer to Guyanese. With respect to your specific question as it relates to the one laptop per family, we know that the government, prior to the introduction of this project, they would have said to the Guyanese populace that, well, look, persons would go through training before they actually get these laptops. But in reality, majority of the persons who were able to access this particular netbook, right, they were not exposed to the training. So what you find, as I said before, is that Guyanese, they are not aware as to what are some of the benefits from this. Because, with regards to the one laptop per family, the government touted about people would be able to access the internet, the children would be able to have their assignments and homework done. But majority of the communities who would have received such laptops, there's no internet access in these areas. Hence, the people just collect these things and left to wander in the wilderness without government's assistance.
Okay. MP Harmon, if I can pull you back in here, and it relates to what MP Ferguson is saying. Apart from how they will benefit, what more can be done, especially when a major project is put out there? And I had a previous conversation with the Brigadier on this. When a major project is put out there, how can we get the public more involved to understand, look, what this project is about? Perfect example, the fiber optic cable project. To this day, I get the sense that there are lots of people out there don't understand what was the purpose of that. How can we get Guyanese more involved in these projects?
The way to do it is by public information. The public has to receive this information, and that is why GINA and these 8 entities were created, to provide public information, or to provide information to the public that is untainted by PPP propaganda. And if we were to utilize those means in ensuring that the public information out there that is about these projects
I believe that it will go a long way in getting people to understand what they're all about. But, you know, some of these projects were conceptualized in darkness or maybe in a smoky room. And therefore, what you have, you cannot now put out the full benefits of the project up front, because once people start to challenge and question these projects, then you might very well find that the whole design will have to change. And a lot of the projects that we find, if you look at it very carefully, that but the bulk of the money already spent, and you haven't, the project is not complete. So for example, the fiber optic cable project we speak about, the bulk of the money is spent. In February of this year, the Prime Minister, in answer to a question that I had asked in the National Assembly about this, he said that the project had $600,000 left in it, and it was not 80% complete. And at that stage, he was talking about having a foreign company to come in to evaluate the work that is being done. And since then, not another word. This expert named Mr. Alexi Ramatar, who is being paid a handsome salary, you're not hearing anything from him anymore. So the public information aspect of these projects, there must be a cost attached to the project itself, right? So that if you have a major project, it's costing you 32 million United States dollars, some element of that project must be, some sum of money must be allocated to public information on the project, so that we understand what benefits we are to get from it. But ultimately, it rests with the government to ensure that this is done. Let me tell you one more thing about these projects. We spent quite a bit of money. The same Syringe Engineering spent a lot of money on the Enmore packaging plant. I think the leader spoke about that this morning, and the quality of sugar he's getting out of these packets. But you know what they're doing there, Malika? They are bagging rice in there. That is what we spent all this money. All of this money we spent as a packaging plant for sugar, and they're packaging rice inside there now. And I challenge the Gaisuko people to prove me wrong, because I have the evidence. That is what they're doing. So a lot of these projects, as I said, from the conceptual stage, we've had problems with them, because they never took the public into their confidence to say, look, we are going to do this on a mile of anhydro project, get the public to contribute to the discussion and so on, and the ultimate decision that is made should have benefited from that. But what they do, they conceptualize this thing in darkness and then foist it on the Guyanese public, and then asking you to agree and accept it. You see, so that is the problem. The point at which public information gets involved in this, or the public gets involved, is when the project is already in the execution phase and maybe almost completed.
Is there a way that you can currently, at this point in time, give somewhat of an approximation as to how much money Guyana would have lost thus far in all 6 of these projects?
I think the leader gave a figure just now of some big billions. I really can't tell you.
All of it has not been spent. Of course, the biggest one would have been the Amila Falls project, which was targeted by 840 million. Of course, all of it isn't spent, but some of it is spent in the road. Were you to put all together, I reckon it would be probably all 6 projects would, if we did spend the money, we would 250 billion Guyana dollars, more than the national budget.
And we still have to come back to some of them.
You still have to pay because these are loans. So this is a projected figure.
Okay.
But some of the money is gone. The Surrender money is gone. The Amila money has been spent. The Atlantic Hotel, the Marriott money has been spent. A lot of the money has been spent, but we don't know what we can recover. That is why I'm calling for this 5-point plan. We need now to go to the table and start putting these numbers together. It's a mess. This has been going on for 15 years. And we now need, as an opposition, to sit down with the government and figure out how much has gone and what we're going to do and how much more is needed. I don't think that there's anybody out there, even in the private sector, because we used to be approached by the private sector approve this, do this. But now they're seeing what happens when these projects are conceived in the darkness, without supervision, without scrutiny. And I don't know if any of them would say, yes, as presently constituted, let us approve surrender, let us approve a mile of falls, let us approve one laptop. These things are badly flawed, so we need to come to the table, and that's why I'm calling for this multi-stakeholder plan and this 5-point approach to dealing with it.
Okay, sir, we're going to come to that multi-stakeholder plan in a minute. Viewers, if you're now joining us, of course, this is Facing the Nation, and today we're discussing what the opposition, what APNU calls 6 flawed major projects in Guyana: the Amila Falls project, the Atlantic Hotels project, which is also the Marriott Cheddi Jagan International Airport project, fiber optic cable, specialty hospital, and the one laptop per family project. Brigadier, you talked about this multi-stakeholder plan. Now, for 3 years, yes, I think it's 3 years, you've been calling on the president and, of course, by extension, the finance minister to have tripartite talks on budget, to come up with a national budget. They apparently have ignored your call. Recently, we've seen the finance minister in the media talking about the fact that he's working on his 2015 budget, and I haven't heard the Brigadier saying that, you were invited to talks on this budget. Now, if you're not invited to talks on the national budget, why are you convinced that you're going to get government's attention to set up this multi-stakeholder plan to deal with major projects?
I'm not convinced that we'll get the government cooperation on anything, quite frankly. It is clear now, in fact, it's clearer now than before, that only a government of national unity could save this country. The PPP cannot save this country. And it has now gone beyond the budget, the tripartite budget committee. Every aspect of government expenditure needs to be brought under the scrutiny of the majority in the National Assembly and even other stakeholders. We need a government of national unity. The PPP cannot be trusted to spend billions of dollars any longer. When the budget comes, if the budget does not include the opposition in some form of tripartite mechanism, there's going to be another collision. I can predict that. And given the attitude of the Minister of Finance and the President for budget for financial year 2011, 2012, 2013, 2013, 2014, these 3 budgets, given the mindset, given the attitude, I can predict that we are going to have another collision next year. So I would say that we're now talking more than a tripartite committee. We're talking about the government of national unity, which will deal with all of these projects. It's not just pinpricking, cherry-picking one particular project. The entire mindset, that's why I said you have to look at it holistically. For 15 years, we have had a series of flawed projects. We have to bring in the Skeldon Sugar Factory. We have to bring in all sorts of projects all over the country. Some are small, some are great, but these are the mega ones. These are the ones costing billions of dollars. But the attitude of the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration to these projects is itself flawed. And as long as they go into these projects with things like NISL, we just have to dismantle this apparatus. President Jagdeo and Ramatar have built a house of cards, and the cards are gradually falling down. That is what has happened. It's a house of cards. And all of these things will eventually collapse if we don't put it under control. And as I said, it's going on for a long time. It involves a lot of money, and it's our money. It's our children's money, and we need to sit down together. So it is beyond now, beyond the tripartite budget committee. We're talking about a major governmental overhaul of all of these projects.
Viewers, I'll take your calls in a minute or two. Brigadier, I must ask this because when you said it earlier, it actually sent off a light bulb in my head. You talked about some of these projects going back to the days of former President Barra Jagdeo. Do you believe that Mr. Jagdeo probably still has a hand or his hands in any of these projects that we're talking about now?
No, I couldn't say that. I'm not there. I don't know. But it is astonishing that President Ramatar doesn't demonstrate more independence. I mean, within 2 months of his assumption of office, he had to put a closure to the FIP Motilal fiasco. So he is aware of this for over 30 months. I don't know what he inherited. I don't know if there's a backseat driver telling him what to do or where to go. But it seems to me that he's not demonstrating the quality of leadership, particularly in this important economic field. So I can't make a comment on Mr. Jagdio. I don't know the person well. But it seems that some of the projects were inherited, and Mr. Ramatar did not himself demonstrate the sort of independence to say from the start whether these projects were viable or feasible. And we have to wait. We, the Guyanese citizens, have to wait till there's complete collapse. I mean, there's nothing. You can't squeeze any more juice out of surrender. Then we're told that the project has got to be terminated. But what we are proposing is that we should examine these projects prior and prevent further mischief. If there is a flaw somewhere, for example, in the Chedijaga International Airport, let us get involved now before we are told this thing is going to collapse. Maybe it could be saved. We would like to save some of these projects which are likely to be beneficial to our people. The greatest good for the greatest number, that is our philosophy. And if there's a problem to Mary North, we want to be involved in solving the problem. If there's a possibility that the fiber optic cable could be saved, we would like to save it. Even though initially we may not have supported it. Money's already been spent. But we don't want to put good money after bad. So this is the time for Ramatar to come to us and start to put these documents on the table. So we're not pretending in a partnership for national unity that we have all the answers. Bring in the private sector, bring in civil society, bring in experts. Let me say one more thing. We are all fed up with flooding. Every time there is a 30-minute shower, there are many parts of Georgetown, particularly South Georgetown, which are flooded. And we called some experts. We started to say there's need for a national flood control strategy. And people are willing to come out. Some of them are retired, some of them are very knowledgeable, but they want to be, they have knowledge. When you sit down and speak to these experts, you can see they have tremendous experience, they have expertise, they have institutional knowledge of what took place before, they know where things are to be found. And if the government were more open and consulted them, we would not have to face this annual cycle of floods. But that is just one aspect. And APNU has taken the lead. What I'm telling Mr. Ramatar, take the lead. Expose these projects to public scrutiny, to greater public and expert scrutiny to prevent the impending catastrophe.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Malika,
Yeah, sure, MP Ferguson.
if you may, in your opening statement, you asked the question whether the opposition or the APNU has been vindicated.
Yes.
But, I just want to remind viewers out there that since the commencement of the 10th Parliament, we were of the view as it relates to, I just need to be specific, the specialty hospital. We thought that this project from the inception would have been a flawed project. I mean, the opposition is not against development in our healthcare, but we were of the firm belief that rather than us building a specialty hospital now, the very monies could have been utilized to improve our current health facilities, specifically the Georgetown Public Hospital. The leader in one of his clips earlier referred to our healthcare, our primary healthcare being in a mess. We would have seen people having to double up on beds. When you go to the hospital, you have to wait lengthy time, 6 hours in some cases, to be attended to, with no medication available. We would have seen our caregivers failing exams on a yearly basis. So what the government should have been doing is to utilize these very monies to improve what we currently have. That's just my point.
Earlier, MP Ferguson, interesting that you should bring that up. Earlier, I had asked you if you had gotten the sense that the Guyanese people understood what was going on in terms of these projects and how it would benefit them. But Do you get the sense that they understand why Brigadier David Granger, MP Joseph Harmon, or MP Carl Greenidge would stand in the National Assembly and say, look, we are not approving monies for this project because so is flawed. Do you get that they understand that, or is it that people have somehow held on to the propaganda where the PPP says APNU don't want development for Guyana? Do they understand the truth?
Well, yes, indeed, because being out there, the people would say, we like the stance that you guys would have taken. They're of the belief that, well, look, these monies can be utilized in these areas rather than wasting it to build these massive, be it a hotel or a hospital. So the people out there, they are in agreement with the position that has been taken by the leader of the opposition and our point spokesman.
All right.
If
Brigadier?
I can add here, you have moved into the realm of public information, public communication.
Yes.
And admittedly, over the last 2.5 years, some businessmen have approached us. There are special interests, there are vested interests. And some people, manufacturers, obviously want cheap electricity. So they tend to support the Mile Falls project. There's some people who, may be interested in the IT sector, and they support the fiber optic cable. So there are vested interests out there who keep needling us, trying to persuade us, convince us to support these projects. But it is because of our diligence and our scrutiny that we've been able to expose the flaws in the project. They might have been taken in by the government's propaganda. Do this, but we, because of our attitude to governance, that we are calling for closer scrutiny, we call on experts, we have been able, not out of malice, we've been able to insist that these projects be looked at a second time. So many of them are really opaque. We discover that some of the businessmen who might be supporting them do not have all of the facts. Some of them are obscure. We don't know what the benefits are. We don't know where the money is coming from. This is in the case with the Marriott Hotel. Some people with a vested interest in tourism want the hotel. But we're saying, well, who are A square? Where's the money coming from? And then there's this, it's a very obscure, and they now are starting to see that the line taken by a Partnership for National Unity over the last 2 to 3 years is in fact the way to go. It's not just a matter of whether you want a 5-star hotel. Maybe some people may be able to go there and have a good time. The question is, follow the numbers. And people are starting to see that NISIL is this spider in this web with all of these projects. And nobody could control NISIL. NISIL is out of control. NISIL is not controlled by the National Assembly, Nobody knows exactly how much money NISIL is disbursing. We can't even prevent NISIL from disbursing. We can't even prevent NISIL from receiving money, even though that is public money. So the attitudes adopted by some of these people in managerial positions have been obtuse. I mean, we have been told by the CEO of a certain corporation that we must go and learn. We're not qualified to criticize him and so on. So these attitudes are very unhelpful. The result is that when matters are brought before the National Assembly, we exercise our scrutiny, and then later on, people start shaking their heads. Maybe they may see some big photograph on the front page of a daily newspaper. Then they realize that they were being fooled by the public information system, particularly by the NCN and China, and the Chronicle newspaper, which always try to make the government's effort look good. But they only do so to the extent that the ordinary people, and sometimes even the people with vested interests, are not given all of the facts. And we've been insisting on the facts. We've been going on the ground. When we speak about Hope Canal, we go on the ground. When we speak about the municipal airport at Ogle, we go on the ground. When we speak about the Mile Falls Road, we go on the ground. So we can't be fooled. And this is what happened to this country on the 20th of November 2011, that the opposition was given the majority, and we are doing what we're supposed to do, scrutinizing the behavior, the conduct of the executive branch.
Okay, viewers, unfortunately, I can't take any of your calls today. Of course, this is a big topic. We're talking 6 major projects. So, and of course, we're almost out of time. But of course, you tuned in as always, and we appreciate that very, very much. As we begin to wrap up, ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin to wrap up this week with the Brigadier by asking you, sir, were APNU to take the reins of government when next we have general elections, what would be priority for your government in terms of a major project where Guyanese can benefit and grow from it?
Well, my priority would go back to education.
Okay.
I feel that the education system underpins the other aspects of development, and I think this is the greatest flaw. It is not one of Jagdio's or Ramatar's mega projects, but unless we straighten out the education system, we cannot produce the scientists, we can't produce the engineers, the contractors who are going to implement these projects. And I am confident that if we straighten out the Cyril Potter College of Education, University of Guyana, the primary schools, the secondary schools, not immediately, but in years to come, we will have an intelligent cadre of persons who could take over these projects and really move Guyana more quickly forward. Right now, it's in hands of jokers.
Okay, thank you, sir. MP Ferguson, as we wrap up, some of your sentiments in bringing the conversation back to the fact that these projects are flawed and we need a government to do better.
Well, I just want to reiterate the call made by the leader of the opposition, calling on the PPPC government to ensure that we get all and sundries on board to relook or revisit these projects so we would not be in the state we are currently. So I trust that the government do accept our request.
Thank you. MP Harmon.
Yes, I would just like to take it at the other level. That is the level of the people. We believe that having reviewed the sort of squandermania that has taken place in these major projects, it has affected the lives of Guyanese citizens. It has affected the amount of monies that can be spent in the communities in which our people live. The roads that have to be fixed, the bridges that have to be fixed, the delivery of potable water, the delivery of reliable electricity in the communities. And therefore what we are seeing, in fact what has emerged here, is that we have to stand up where these issues are concerned. We can no longer just allow these things to happen and the government continues to do these things, spend massive amounts of money on projects that are meant to be transformational, but are in fact, all they do is they transform the depth of the pocket of their supporters. So we have to ensure that people stand up in the barbershops, in the salons, in the towns, in the churches, in the marketplaces. We must stand up to this PPP tyranny that has actually pauperized the great majority of the Guyanese people. And we have called upon them, in fact, to join the APNU and let us stand on your feet. Get on your feet, Guyana. This government here is not doing well for you. It's pauperizing you because of the expenses connected to these projects and the monies that they're basically creaming off to their friends and supporters.
Thank you very much, sir. Well said. Perfect note to end on. I'd like to thank the members of the panel today, beginning with APNU Member of Parliament, Ms. Annette Ferguson, who holds and assists in the public works and infrastructure sector. Also, thank you very much to APNU Member of Parliament and Shadow Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, who's also an attorney at law, Mr. Joseph Harmon, and of course, leader of the People's National Congress Reform and leader of the opposition, Brigadier the Honorable David Granger. This has been Facing the Nation, and we were discussing the 6 major flawed projects that has, in a sense, brought more burden to the Guyanese people rather than relief and rather than solution. I am Malika Ramsey. Join me again next time. Of course, be good Guyanese citizens. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Goodbye.